All right, welcome into the deep dive. We're diving into multi-factor authentication today, or, MFA, and how it protects something experts are calling secrets. We've got some articles and a YouTube video description, and, well, one name keeps coming up. Bert Blevins.
Yeah, he seems to be everywhere these days. A real authority in this space.
So let's jump right in. What exactly are these so-called secrets that we need to protect?
Well, it's interesting how Blevins, how he frames it.
Yeah.
He's talking about things like financial records, personal information, even like proprietary business knowledge, basically anything digitally stored that has, significant value.
No, it's not just like our passwords anymore. We're talking about like a whole different level of security here.
Right. I mean, think about it. In today's world, almost everything of value is stored digitally, and it's all under threat.
Okay, so for those of us who, already use MFA on our bank accounts and email, what else should we be thinking about?
That's a great question. And that's where MFA comes in, right?
Yeah.
It adds those extra layers of security beyond just a simple password.
Okay, so we're talking about like, instead of just knowing a password, I might need to confirm my identity with something else, like a code sent to my phone or even a fingerprint scan.
Exactly. And it's not just about, one type of MFA either. There are different types, each with its own strengths and weaknesses.
Oh, okay. So like a physical security key might be super secure, but maybe not so practical for everyone.
Right, exactly. It's about finding the right balance between, security and convenience.
Okay, that makes sense. But isn't all this just a bit much for the average person? Like, isn't it creating more hassle than it's worth?
Well, let's face it, nobody loves extra steps.
Yeah, that's true.
But the reality is, cyber attacks are getting more and more sophisticated, and we need to, up our game.
Okay, so prevention is better than cure, right?
Exactly. Think about the consequences of a data breach. Identity theft, financial losses. It's a real mess.
Right.
And MFA, it might seem like a small thing, but it's a powerful tool.
I hear you. But how do we make sure it's actually effective without becoming a total headache for everyone?
That's the key question. And that's where Blevins' work gets really interesting. In his YouTube videos, he talks about these concepts, least privilege access and PAM solutions.
PAM solutions.
Yeah.
Okay, so least privilege access, is he talking about making sure people only have access to the information they absolutely need?
Exactly. It's about limiting access to only what's essential for someone to do their job. Kind of like a digital version of need to know.
Okay. But wouldn't that be super complicated to manage, especially for like larger organizations?
Well, that's where those PAM solutions come in.
PAM solution.
Privileged access management.
Yeah.
They're tools that help organizations control and monitor, who has access to what. Think of it like a high-tech security guard for your digital assets.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture, so help me understand this. How does this least privilege access thing work in the real world? Like, are we talking about constantly changing passwords and permissions?
Not necessarily. It's more about having a system in place that automatically grants and revokes access based on a person's role and responsibilities.
Okay.
Let's say you work in a big company. With least privilege access, your role would determine what you can get to.
Okay.
Someone in accounting might have access to financial records, but not, say, customer databases or marketing materials.
Oh, okay. So even if one account is compromised, the damage is limited because the attacker only has access to, a specific part of the data.
Right, exactly. It's all about containing the potential damage.
That makes sense. So it's kind of like compartmentalizing information to, minimize the risk.
Precisely.
But how does this relate to me, someone who's not managing, a huge company's data?
That's a great question. And it's important because, these principles behind least privilege access, they can apply to our own personal digital lives as well.
Really?
Think about all the apps and services you use that have access to your data.
Oh, wow.
Do they all need access to, your entire contact list or your location?
Probably not.
Right. So it's about being more mindful of what you're sharing and who you're sharing it with.
So you're saying I should be more careful about what I'm sharing and who I'm sharing it with, almost like creating my own personal least privilege access system.
Exactly. It's about taking control of your digital footprint.
Okay, that sounds a little overwhelming.
It can be, but the key is to start small.
Okay, so before I go on a digital detox and delete all my accounts, what are some simple things I can do to implement this idea?
Well, a good first step is to review those app permissions on your devices.
Okay.
Take a look at the apps you use and ask yourself, do they really need access to all this information?
Yeah.
And if not, revoke those permissions.
Okay, I can do that. Are there other simple things I can do to, enhance my digital security without having to become a cybersecurity expert?
Absolutely. One thing that people often overlook is passwords.
Password.
Are you using strong, unique passwords for each of your accounts?
Yeah.
Or are you guilty of reusing the same password everywhere?
Okay, I'll admit I'm probably guilty of that one. So, what's the best way to manage all these different passwords? I don't want to be writing them all down on a sticky note.
That's where password managers come in.
Password managers.
Yeah, they can generate those strong, unique passwords for you and store them securely. You just have to remember one master password.
Oh, wow. Okay, that sounds much more secure. And speaking of security experts, let's get back to Bert Blevins. We've talked about MFA and, these intriguing concepts of least privilege access and PAM solutions. But there's got to be more to this guy, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Blevins seems to be like a true multi-hyphenate. A consultant, author, speaker. He's even an adjunct professor.
Wow, that's impressive.
And he's passionate about using technology to solve real-world problems.
And his work extends beyond just the technical, too. He's involved with organizations like Rotary International and the American Heart Association.
Yeah, exactly. He's committed to a broader vision of how technology can be used to make a positive impact.
So it's he sees technology not just as a tool, but as a way to make the world a better place.
Right. It's not just about bits and bytes, It's about leveraging technology to benefit humanity.
That's really cool. He even mentions working on these private blockchain projects. Now that sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It might sound futuristic, but blockchain technology is actually having a real-world impact already. While most people, associated with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies,
right,
it has much broader applications. A private blockchain, it offers a way to create these secure and transparent systems for tracking data and transactions within a specific organization or group.
So it's this super secure digital ledger, but only those who need it can access it.
Precisely. Imagine a world where, your medical records are totally secure, but easily accessible to authorized doctors. That's just one example of its potential.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. It really makes you wonder what other innovations are just around the corner.
It truly is a fascinating time for technology, and Blevins seems to be right at the forefront of it all.
So this all sounds really great, but his work does raise a question. How can we embrace these technological advancements, but also make sure they're used ethically and responsibly?
Right. We need to be thoughtful about how we integrate these new technologies into our lives.
It's finding that balance, between harnessing the power of innovation and protecting our values and privacy.
Exactly. And this is where Blevins' focus on, collaboration and community comes in. It's not just about building technology, it's about building trust and making sure that these advancements benefit everyone.
It's inspiring to see someone like Blevins taking this holistic approach. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's bring it back to MFA. How does all this relate to our daily lives?
Okay, so we've talked about the benefits of MFA, but there's another crucial aspect to consider. Implementation. How do we actually get this technology into the hands of the people who need it?
Right. It's one thing to understand the concept, but it's another to actually, put it into practice. What are the challenges involved in making this happen on a larger scale?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is striking that balance.
Yeah.
Between security and convenience.
Right.
MFA needs to be easy to use.
Right.
And understand. Otherwise, people just won't use it.
It's that age-old dilemma, right?
Right.
Security versus usability. How do we make sure MFA doesn't become a barrier?
Exactly. And that's where user experience design comes in. We need to create MFA solutions that are intuitive and user-friendly.
Okay.
So people don't feel like security is this, this obstacle they have to overcome.
So things like fingerprint scanners and facial recognition, they add security without requiring people to remember those complex passwords.
Exactly.
Or carry around physical tokens.
Right. It's about making security seamless, integrated into our digital lives.
So it's like having a bodyguard for your digital life, working behind the scenes to keep you safe.
That's a good way to put it.
But what about, the cost factor? Are these solutions accessible to everyone, or are they just for, people with deep pockets?
Well, the good news is that a lot of MFA solutions are becoming more and more affordable,
Oh, okay.
even for individuals and small businesses.
So it's not just for the tech-savvy elite?
Not at all. As awareness about cybersecurity risks grows, MFA is becoming more of a standard practice. And as more people adopt it, costs are likely to come down even further.
This is encouraging. So MFA is becoming a tool for everyone, allowing people to take control of their own digital security. But how do we make sure people actually, use it effectively? I mean, education must play a crucial role here, right?
Absolutely. Education is key. We need to make sure people really understand why MFA is important and how to use it properly. And that's where clear communication comes in and, user-friendly interfaces.
So it's a team effort. Tech companies need to build solutions that are easy to use. And individuals need to be, educated on those best practices.
Right.
And organizations need to provide clear guidelines and, support.
It's about creating a culture of security awareness and making it a shared responsibility.
Exactly. Working together to create a safer digital world for everyone.
Oh.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about another area where Blevins has some interesting thoughts. Cyber insurance.
Okay.
It seems like we hear more and more about cyber insurance these days. Is this something everyone needs to be thinking about?
Well, as cyber attacks become more common and more sophisticated, cyber insurance is definitely becoming more important.
So is it kind of like car insurance, but for your digital life?
That's a good way to put it. It's like a safety net for the digital age.
A safety net.
It can help individuals and businesses, deal with the financial impact of a data breach. Things like legal fees, credit monitoring services, even regulatory fines.
So just like, you wouldn't drive without car insurance. Nowadays, it's becoming more important to consider cyber insurance to protect yourself and your, digital assets.
Exactly. It's about managing risk in a world where data is increasingly valuable and vulnerable.
Okay, so how do you know if you actually need cyber insurance? What kind of things should you consider?
Well, there are a few key factors: the type of data you handle, the size of your business, your industry, and your overall risk tolerance.
So there's a lot to think about.
Right. It's worth doing some research and maybe talking to an insurance professional.
To see if it's right for you.
Exactly.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from, MFA and least privilege access to cyber insurance and even blockchain technology.
It's amazing how all these concepts are interconnected, isn't it?
It really is. And it just goes to show how important it is to stay informed and, proactive in this digital age. What's been the most surprising thing you've learned today?
For me, it's the human element that stands out. We often talk about technology like it's, separate from us. But Blevins' work, it shows how important human collaboration is and ethical decision-making.
It's about creating a secure world that benefits everyone.
Exactly.
That's a really important point. It's a reminder that technology is, it's a tool. And it's up to us to use it wisely and responsibly.
Absolutely. And as we continue to, navigate this digital world, it's crucial to stay informed, stay engaged, and stay curious. We can't afford to be complacent.
Well said. Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a thought-provoking question to consider. Think about your own digital life. What steps can you take today to enhance your security and become, a more informed and empowered digital citizen?
We'll be back in a flash to wrap things up. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back. We've been talking about multi-factor authentication, cyber insurance, blockchain technology, and the work of cybersecurity expert Bert Blevins.
Yeah, it's been a pretty fascinating deep dive.
It really has, and it all started with just one guy's insights.
It's pretty incredible how far we've come, from those MFA basics to talking about the ethics of technology. It shows how much it all connects.
Absolutely. It's like a reminder to stay, informed, because this digital world's always changing. And speaking of Blevins, we've mentioned his background a bit: consultant, author, speaker, even a professor.
It's like he's constantly learning new things and then sharing them with everyone else.
Right. And it's not just the technical stuff either. Like, he's involved with Rotary International and the American Heart Association.
Yeah, he's definitely committed to making a real difference.
It's like he sees technology as a way to, make the world a better place, not just like a bunch of gadgets and code.
Exactly. It's about using it for good.
And we've talked about his work with MFA, least privilege access, PAM solutions. There's one thing we haven't really dug into yet, and I gotta say, I'm pretty curious about it. Those private blockchain projects he's involved with?
Ah, yes. Blockchain. It's definitely a buzzword these days.
It is. And I'll admit, I don't really get what it's all about. It sounds kind of, complicated.
It might seem that way, but it's actually pretty simple once you break it down. Most people associate blockchain with, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's what I always think of.
But it's way more versatile than that. Think of a private blockchain as a really secure digital ledger, like a record-keeping system that can't be tampered with, and is controlled by a specific organization or group.
So it's only accessible to those who are, authorized.
Exactly. It's got a ton of potential uses. Supply chain management, secure voting systems, tracking medical records. The possibilities are pretty much endless.
That sounds really useful, especially in, fields where data integrity is super important.
Right. Like, imagine being able to track where your food comes from, all the way from the farm to your plate.
Yeah.
Or a voting system where you can be absolutely sure that there's no fraud going on.
That's pretty wild. It makes you wonder what other amazing things are coming down the pike.
It's definitely an exciting time to be following all this. And Blevins seems to be right in the thick of it.
He does, doesn't he? It's kind of contagious, his enthusiasm. It makes you want to learn more and be part of it all. But let's bring it back to what we were talking about before, MFA, and its role in protecting our digital lives.
Okay. We talked about the benefits of MFA and how important it is to balance security with, convenience. But there's another side to it. Implementation. How do we make sure this technology actually gets to the people who need it?
That's a good point, because, it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to actually make it happen. What are some of the challenges involved in, getting MFA out there on a bigger scale?
Well, honestly, one of the biggest hurdles is just getting people to use it.
Yeah, I can see that.
No one really loves having to go through extra steps to get into their accounts. People want things to be easy. So if MFA feels like a hassle, they're less likely to bother with it.
It's that constant battle, right? Security versus usability. How do we make sure that MFA isn't too much of a burden for people, especially those who, might need it the most?
Right. And that's where good design comes in. Yeah. We need to make MFA solutions that are, intuitive and easy to use so people don't feel like security is this big, scary obstacle.
Things like, those fingerprint scanners and facial recognition, they add an extra layer of protection without making people memorize a bunch of complicated passwords.
Exactly. Or carry around those little token things.
Right. It's about making security, seamless, part of our everyday lives.
Exactly. And as technology keeps evolving, MFA is just going to become even more integrated and user-friendly. It'll be like having an invisible bodyguard for your digital life.
Yeah.
Always there, working behind the scenes to keep you safe.
That's a good analogy. But what about, the cost? Are these solutions affordable for everyone, or are they just for those who, can afford to shell out big bucks?
Well, that's a legitimate concern. But the good news is that a lot of MFA solutions are becoming more affordable all the time, even for, individuals and small businesses.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
And a lot of online services now offer basic MFA options for free.
So it's not just a luxury for, the tech elite anymore.
Not at all. It's becoming more and more mainstream. As more people realize how important cybersecurity is, MFA is just going to become standard practice.
That's really encouraging. It sounds like MFA is becoming a tool that everyone can use to, take control of their own digital security. But how do we make sure that people actually use it correctly? I mean, education's got to play a big role here, right?
Absolutely. Education is key. We need to make sure people understand why MFA is important and, how to use it the right way. And that means clear communication and user-friendly interfaces that aren't too confusing.
So it's a team effort, right? Tech companies need to build user-friendly solutions, and individuals need to be educated about, the best ways to stay safe online.
Right.
And organizations need to provide support and guidance.
It's about creating a culture where everyone understands the importance of security and takes responsibility for it.
It's about working together to make the whole digital world safer. Now, let's switch gears a bit. Blevins also has some interesting thoughts about cyber insurance.
Oh yeah, cyber insurance is definitely a hot topic these days.
It is. It seems like we hear about it more and more. So is this something that, like, everyone needs to be thinking about?
Well, with cyber attacks becoming so common and, so sophisticated,
Yeah.
it's definitely becoming more relevant.
So is it kind of like, like car insurance, but for your digital life?
That's a pretty good analogy, actually. Just like you wouldn't drive a car without insurance, in today's world, it's becoming increasingly important to think about cyber insurance to protect yourself and your digital assets.
Makes sense. It's all about managing risk, especially now that data is so valuable and vulnerable. But how do you know if you actually need cyber insurance? What are some of the things to, consider?
Well, it depends on a few factors. The type of data you handle, the size of your business, what industry you're in, and your overall risk tolerance.
So it's not like a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Right. It's worth doing a little research and maybe even talking to an insurance expert.
To figure out if it's right for you.
Exactly.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from MFA and least privilege access to cyber insurance and even, blockchain technology.
It's really amazing how all these ideas are connected, isn't it?
It is, and it just goes to show how important it is to, stay informed.
Yeah.
Especially in this digital world that's constantly changing. What's been, like, the most surprising thing you've learned today?
For me, it's how important the human element is. We often talk about technology like it's this separate thing, but Blevins' work really highlights the need for collaboration, for ethical decision-making.
It's about creating a digital world that works for everyone.
Exactly.
That's a really great point. Technology is just a tool, and it's up to us to use it in the right way. We're not just, passengers along for the ride. We can actually shape how technology affects our lives.
Absolutely. And as we move forward in this digital landscape, it's so important to stay curious and engaged. We can't just sit back and let things happen.
Right. We have to be proactive. Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final thought. Think about your own digital life. What can you do today to make it more secure? What can you do to become, a more informed and empowered digital citizen?
We'll be right back to wrap things up. Stick around.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been exploring multi-factor authentication, cyber insurance, blockchain technology, and a whole lot more, all thanks to the insights of, Bert Blevins.
Yeah, it's been a pretty wild ride, hasn't it? Who knew cybersecurity could be so fascinating?
Right. It all started with this idea of, protecting our secrets online. And now we're talking about, like, the future of technology and the impact it's having on, everything.
It's like we've gone from the micro to the macro, from those individual steps we can take to protect ourselves, all the way to thinking about, like, the big picture. How do we build a digital world that's secure and, benefits everyone?
And that brings us back to the question we asked before we went away for a moment. What can you do, our listeners, to become more secure and empowered online?
Yeah, it's a question worth thinking about.
Definitely. We've talked about a lot of different tools and strategies, multi-factor authentication, app permissions, good password habits. But it's not just about the technical stuff, is it?
Nope. It's also about, like, changing your mindset.
Yeah.
Being aware of the risks out there.
Mm-hmm.
And also, opportunities that technology brings.
Being proactive, not reactive.
Exactly. Don't wait until something bad happens.
Mm-hmm.
Take some time to educate yourself, check out some resources, and start making those informed decisions about your digital life.
Mm-hmm.
It's really empowering to realize that you actually have, like, control. You're not just at the mercy of technology. You can shape how it impacts you.
So it's about taking back control of your digital destiny, I guess you could say. And it doesn't have to be this big, overwhelming thing. Start small. Maybe it's turning on MFA for those, important accounts, or checking those app permissions, or finally setting up that password manager you've been meaning to get around to.
Exactly. Every little step helps.
It's like a collective effort, right?
It is.
Like, we all have to do our part to make the digital world a safer place for everyone. And, don't be afraid to talk to your friends and family about all this. Share what you're learning. Encourage them to, take those steps to protect themselves.
It's like we're all in this together.
Exactly. And when we all work together, that's when we can really make a difference.
Well said. It's been a real pleasure exploring all this with you. It's amazing how much ground we've covered.
I know, right? From MFA to blockchain and everything in between.
And it just goes to show that, learning never stops.
Yeah.
Especially in this digital age.
Absolutely. So stay curious, stay engaged, and keep learning.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that about wraps up this deep dive into the world of cybersecurity and multi-factor authentication. We hope you've learned a lot and feel empowered to, take control of your digital life.
Thanks for joining us.
And be sure to tune in next time for another deep dive into a fascinating topic. Until then, stay safe, stay informed, and keep exploring.